Okay, today we pause for a moment in the rush of endless notifications, headlines, and demands that surround us. In this world of constant noise, fear often slips quietly into our lives. Not only fear of danger, but fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. These shadows grow larger when left unnamed, shaping choices and narrowing paths. Welcome to Stoic Dhamma, a place where timeless Stoic wisdom meets today's struggles. Here we pause, reflect with care, and search for clarity. In this space, philosophy becomes practical guidance, offering steady strength for living wisely amid life's constant challenges. Today's journey explores the essence of real courage, discerning what does not deserve our fear. This timeless Stoic lesson offers a steady compass for navigating uncertainty. By releasing unnecessary anxieties and focusing on reason, we learn to face life's challenges with calm strength and inner freedom. Courage is often spoken of in stories of warriors, explorers, or heroes standing against overwhelming odds. Yet, in the quiet wisdom of Stoic philosophy, courage is not defined only by acts of bold defiance. Instead, it is measured by clarity, by the ability to see through illusions of fear and act with reasoned calm. When we think of fear, we often picture great dangers, storms, violence, or the collapse of certainty. But much of what consumes us in modern life is not physical threat. It is the imagined weight of judgment, rejection, or failure. These are shadows of the mind, not real dangers of the body. The Stoics teach that true courage is not about erasing fear, but discerning what truly deserves our concern. When we separate real danger from illusion, we move with quiet strength, free from needless chains. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that distress arises not from events themselves, but from our judgments of them. Fear often springs from interpretation, not reality. Bravery may leap without thought, but Stoic courage pauses, asking, "Is this worth fearing, or only the echo of a fleeting thought?" In our modern world, appearances deceive. Social media magnifies every critique into a storm and every silence into rejection. Yet, with clarity, we see that most fears dissolve once named. Real dangers are few. Imagined ones multiply endlessly. Courage grows when we meet life not with panic but with reason and steady vision. Now imagine standing before a challenge, a presentation at work, a difficult conversation, or a bold decision for your future. Your heart races, your mind warns of failure. Yet if you ask, what real harm can this bring? The perspective shifts. Fear loses its sharp edge. Epictetus often taught that courage begins in the mind, for people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. When we see this truth, the battlefield of courage is no longer outside, but within our own thoughts. But there's another layer. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the capacity to act even when fear is present. To step forward with calm steadiness, guided by discernment, is far stronger than to feel nothing at all. Real courage, then, is a practice of perception. It is a daily choice to separate what is essential from what is empty. The clamor of imagined dangers fades when we root ourselves in the present moment, when we accept that only real harm deserves our energy. Consider Seneca, who often reminded his students that most of our fears are borrowed from the future. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Courage, he explained, is simply the act of resisting this needless suffering, of returning to what is here and now. You may feel that courage belongs to the battlefield or the arena, but Stoic philosophy teaches otherwise. Courage belongs also to the mother raising her child with patience, the student confronting uncertainty with discipline, the worker facing criticism without despair. These are quiet acts of true strength. From here we see that courage is not grand spectacle but steady vision. It allows us to recognize when fear is a guide and when it is a trickster. Without this discernment, we waste energy battling shadows instead of living fully. Let us reflect together. How often do you allow fear to decide for you? How often have you stepped back from opportunity, silenced your voice, or accepted less because of imagined failure? These moments reveal where courage still waits to be awakened. Courage is not about leaping into danger without thought. It is about living in harmony with reason, resisting the pull of false alarms, and answering only the calls that matter. This way of being does not exhaust us, it frees us. In everyday life, courage can be as simple as saying no to what harms you, yes to what nourishes you, and choosing not to fear judgment from those who do not walk your path. These acts, though small, carry immense strength. The Stoics believed courage is one of the 4 cardinal virtues, alongside wisdom, justice, and temperance. Without courage, wisdom cannot act. Without courage, justice cannot stand. Without courage, temperance cannot endure. It is the spine that supports all others. Now imagine your life without misplaced fear. How would decisions unfold if you distinguished clearly between the imagined and the real? The heaviness of worry would fall away, leaving space for calm purpose. This is the promise of Stoic courage. But courage also requires humility. It asks us to admit that we cannot control all outcomes, and therefore not all fears can be removed. What we can control is our judgment, our perception, and our response. That is where true freedom lies. The next time fear arises, pause and ask, is this truly harmful, or is it only my mind weaving stories? This small question has the power to dissolve illusions and restore inner balance. The world often praises courage as loud, visible acts. Yet some of the greatest acts of courage are silent, forgiving when anger tempts, remaining calm in chaos, or holding integrity in the face of pressure. These are the victories the Stoics cherished. From here, we see that courage is not an abstract idea, but a living practice. Each day brings chances to choose reason over panic, clarity over confusion, strength over surrender. These choices, though small, accumulate into a life of deep resilience. Imagine history without courage, Marcus Aurelius without steadiness, Epictetus without inner strength, Seneca without calm resolve. Their greatness lay not in ignoring fear, but in refusing its rule. True courage today is not the erasure of fear, but the wisdom to understand it, name it, and decide what deserves attention. When reason guides, courage becomes quiet freedom. Reflect. How often do you let fear, not clarity, shape your choices? In awareness, courage reminds you, fear is not the master. You are. With this truth, we turn to the origins of Stoic wisdom and its timeless lessons. The roots of Stoic philosophy stretch back to ancient Greece, where fear, courage, and wisdom were woven into daily life. Long before our modern battles with anxiety and doubt, thinkers asked how humans could live in harmony with nature, reason, and themselves. Out of this pursuit, courage gained a deeper meaning. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, began teaching in the painted porch of Athens, surrounded by citizens, merchants, and those searching for wisdom. Unlike many of his time, he did not equate courage with reckless boldness or blind leaps into danger. Instead, he described it as living in alignment with nature and guided by reason. For Zeno, true strength was not measured by how many enemies one could defeat, but by how clearly one could see through illusion and master the fears born of false judgments. In the turbulent worlds of Greece and later Rome, courage was often celebrated on the battlefield or in grand public spectacles. Victories, parades, and external conquests defined power in the eyes of many. Yet the Stoics shifted the question inward. They asked, what good is ruling armies or gaining wealth if the soul itself remains enslaved to fear? For them, real courage was an inner strength, a quiet resilience that began not with domination of others, but with mastery of oneself. Seneca, centuries later, warned against imagined fears. In his letters, he reminded students that life is short, and that most suffering arises not from events themselves, but from anticipation. Courage, he wrote, is the art of refusing to suffer needlessly before suffering actually arrives. Epictetus, once a slave, embodied this principle. Despite hardships beyond his control, he insisted freedom and courage depend on judgment, not circumstance. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them, he told his students. Fear, then, is a judgment. Courage is a new judgment shaped by reason. The Stoics also built on Cynic philosophy, which had rejected wealth, power, and status as false values. They went further, teaching that fear of losing such things was misplaced. A wise person fears only the loss of virtue, for virtue is truly within our control. The ancient world was filled with genuine threats, wars, plagues, and collapsing empires. Yet even then the Stoics distinguished between what could and could not be controlled. Courage was not denial of danger but clarity, knowing when fear was unnecessary. Marcus Aurelius, emperor at the height of Rome's power, faced both war and plague. His private meditations reminded him that death, pain, and loss are natural. The true danger lies not in events themselves, but in allowing fear to corrupt the mind. For the Stoics, courage was never an isolated quality. It stood alongside wisdom, justice, and temperance, drawing its strength and balance from them. Wisdom offered direction, justice gave purpose, and temperance provided restraint. Without this harmony, courage could easily decay into rashness, cruelty, or reckless impulse. Philosophy itself was seen as medicine for the soul, a daily practice rather than an abstract pursuit. In temples and academies, students were trained through reflection, considering potential fears in the morning, and reviewing their choices each evening. Courage, in this light, was not the privilege of soldiers or rulers, but the universal path to freedom available to every human being. Archaeological fragments, letters, inscriptions, statues, reveal how central these teachings were. They were not abstract speculation, but practical instruction for survival and resilience. Even today, the wisdom echoes. Courage is not spectacle, but quiet strength. Stoicism spread far beyond philosophy, shaping law, politics, and even military strategy. Generals, emperors, and ordinary citizens embraced its call to steadiness. To live stoically was to live unafraid of illusions, steady in truth. Critics accused the Stoics of coldness, of detachment from human feeling. But they never denied fear. They acknowledged it, then placed it in its rightful place, subject to reason. This is the discipline of courage, to feel fear, but not obey it. Seneca noted that, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Without courage, we become prisoners of our own minds. With it, we regain freedom." Epictetus demonstrated this freedom vividly. Though enslaved in body, he refused to let fear enslave his mind. By mastering judgment, he showed that dignity comes from within. No external power could own his soul. Marcus Aurelius, seated in Rome's palace, faced uncertainty with serenity. "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he wrote. Here lies the heart of Stoic courage, mastery over thought. This teaching was not reserved for philosophers or emperors. Merchants fearing loss, soldiers facing death, and children learning life's ways were all encouraged to cultivate courage. Fortune did not bestow it. It was chosen through thought and practice. The Stoics trained courage like a muscle. Each morning they rehearsed possible challenges. Each evening they reviewed their responses. Through repetition, fear weakened and clarity grew. Today, our fears echo those of the past. They arise not from reality but from unexamined judgments and unmet desires. By naming them clearly, as the Stoics taught, we dissolve their hold. The Stoics taught that the origin of courage is also the origin of true freedom. A person who learns to live without misplaced fear begins to walk in harmony with nature, with reason, and with the larger order of the universe. This way of life is not about denial or escape from reality, but about facing it directly with steadiness and clarity. To recognize what is not worth fearing is to reclaim inner balance and lasting purpose. Without this discipline, we are carried away by every wave of anxiety, restless and uncertain. But with it, the mind grows calm, the heart steady, and life becomes anchored in wisdom. This was the promise of Stoic courage in ancient Greece and Rome, and it remains just as relevant today. Fear may change its shape across time, but the path to freedom through courage remains timeless. Courage, when kept in theory, can feel distant, like noble words carved in stone or buried in ancient texts. Yet the Stoics never intended their philosophy to remain in libraries. It was a living guide, meant to be tested daily against life's struggles. True courage is not an abstract ideal, but a discipline for ordinary people facing ordinary fears. At work, fear often takes subtle forms. It shows up as hesitation to share an idea, avoidance of responsibility, or silence in the face of unfairness. These are not battles fought with swords, but with voice and presence. To act with integrity, even when comfort urges silence, is to practice courage in its most relevant form. Personal relationships bring another arena for courage. Speaking honestly, forgiving when hurt, or listening with patience demands strength. The Stoics remind us that love and connection cannot exist without the willingness to risk vulnerability. Without courage, bonds remain shallow and fragile. Then there are the private fears we rarely confess. The whisper that we are not enough, the dread of failing before we even try. These inner struggles can be more demanding than external obstacles. Here, courage means turning inward, facing the storm of self-criticism, and responding with reason rather than surrender. The Stoics did not claim that words alone erase fear. They prescribed practices, habits that reshape perception and train the mind. One of the most powerful was journaling. By writing about daily experiences, they untangled knots of thought, examined fears, and distinguished between reality and illusion. Journaling transformed unease into clarity and mistakes into lessons for tomorrow. Another method was mental rehearsal. Stoics often visualized loss, rejection, or failure, not to cultivate despair, but to strip hardships of their sting. When the unexpected came, they met it calmly because they had already rehearsed it. Courage grows when surprise loses its power to terrify. Imagine preparing for a difficult conversation. Instead of letting fear escalate, you rehearse the scene in your mind. What you might say, how emotions could rise, the outcomes that may follow. This quiet preparation reduces mystery. When the moment comes, you walk into it with readiness, not trembling. Stillness and reflection also played a central role. The Stoics practiced pausing to observe their thoughts. In that silence, fears revealed themselves as judgments and assumptions rather than absolute truths. By seeing them clearly, one learns not every fear deserves obedience. Many can be allowed to drift away like passing clouds. Importantly, courage does not grow from grand gestures alone, but from small daily acts. The Stoics often urged students to begin with what was within reach. Speaking when silence feels safer, starting a task that seems daunting, or resisting the urge to retreat. Each small act builds resilience, much like training a muscle. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes ordinary. Mindfulness strengthens this process. By slowing down and observing reactions, you learn to pause before responding. In that pause lies the essential question: is this a real danger, or only an imagined one? This mindful inquiry is the doorway through which courage enters. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often that the present moment is sufficient. Fear usually lives in the future, in what has not yet happened. Returning to the present dissolves much of its power. To act here and now with calm reason is to act courageously. In relationships, courage can mean saying no under pressure, or yes when the heart longs to connect. It may involve forgiving without certainty of healing, showing strength rather than weakness. At work, courage appears in owning mistakes, admitting ignorance, or striving for excellence despite criticism. For the Stoic, the aim is not to impress but to stay true to reason and virtue. Inwardly, courage is acknowledging limits without shame. To see flaws clearly and still act with wisdom is greater than denying fear's existence. All these practices, journaling, rehearsal, reflection, serve a single purpose: separating truth from illusion. When you realize many fears are only stories, their grip weakens. Clarity replaces panic and courage becomes possible. Daily habits reinforce this discipline. Begin small. Face a task you've delayed. Speak honestly. Endure a minor discomfort. Each step trains the mind to see fear not as a wall but as a challenge to grow. Community also matters. Stoic teachers often gathered groups, reminding students that courage thrives in shared purpose. Surrounding yourself with people who value integrity strengthens your own resolve. Fear shrinks when faced together. Now imagine living where fear no longer dictates choices. It still whispers, but it no longer commands. You step into challenges with steadiness, guided by reason rather than panic. This is not a fearless life. It is a free one. Seneca observed that life is long if we know how to use it. Courage is one way to use it well. By rejecting empty fears, you create space for purpose, creativity, and love. These are the fruits of a courageous life. But patience is essential. Courage does not bloom overnight. It grows through repeated practice, through calm endurance of failure, through returning again and again to reason. This patience itself is courage, the decision to keep going even when progress feels slow. Thus, courage in daily life is not extraordinary. It is ordinary discipline. It is the application of ancient wisdom to modern challenges, at work, in relationships, and within ourselves. Courage is accessible, practical, and essential. The Stoics leave us a timeless invitation. Observe your fears, reflect on them, test them, and then step forward with reason as your guide. In this way, every day becomes a chance to practice courage, not through heroic leaps but through steady, deliberate acts of clarity. And as we walk this path, courage ceases to be a shield against life. Instead, it becomes the strength to live fully within it, the art of acting with calm wisdom no matter the storm. This, above all, is how courage finds its place in the rhythm of everyday life. When philosophy is left only in books, it risks becoming decoration for the mind, rather than medicine for the soul. Stoicism has endured not because it was written, but because it was lived, tested in adversity, refined through action, and embodied by those who practiced it with courage. By looking at their examples, we see that courage is not an abstract concept, but a living force that shapes both individual growth and collective history. Marcus Aurelius is often regarded as one of the clearest examples of Stoic courage. As Emperor of Rome, he carried immense responsibility during years marked by war, plague, and political unrest. His meditations, written as personal reflections, show a man determined to act with reason, resist anger, and rise above fear. He believed that fear did not come from events themselves, but from the judgments people placed upon them. His ability to remain calm under extreme pressure illustrates that true courage begins in the mind, before it appears in outward action. This becomes evident in his response to the Antonine Plague. Marcus could not stop the disease, yet he chose to govern steadily, focusing on what was within his control, his decisions, leadership, and example. Courage, for him, meant acting where he could make a difference, and accepting with dignity what he could not change. Seneca offers another view of Stoic courage. Living under the dangers of Roman politics, he urged his readers to cultivate inner freedom. For him, courage was meeting wealth, loss, or death with composure. His calm acceptance of death, when ordered by Nero, revealed his teaching in practice. Courage is found in accepting nature's course without letting fear dominate the soul. Epictetus adds a profound dimension to Stoic courage. Born into slavery, he endured hardship and cruelty, yet rose to become a great teacher. His central lesson was radical. While fate may take possessions, freedom, or comfort, it cannot touch the mind unless we yield it. True courage, he taught, lies in mastering our judgments and choices. By living this truth, Epictetus showed that even in chains, the soul remains unbroken, and inner freedom endures. The spirit of Stoic courage continues to shine in modern times. Nelson Mandela, though not a Stoic in name, lived its essence. Imprisoned for 27 years, he endured without bitterness, emerging with a vision of reconciliation rather than revenge. His resilience reflects the Stoic lesson. Focus on what you can control, your integrity, your choices, and release the rest. Similarly, Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning, discovered the last inner freedom, the power to choose one's response, Even in the camps surrounded by fear, he refused despair. Another striking example is Malala Yousafzai, who stood firm for girls' education despite violence. Her courage shows how conviction can transform suffering into hope for millions. What unites these figures is that Stoic courage is rarely flashy. It is not loud boasting or reckless bravado. More often, it is quiet persistence. The calm leader in crisis, the prisoner who maintains dignity, the individual who acts with integrity despite fear. In every case, knowledge and action align. Wisdom provides direction, and courage gives it life. How can we apply this today? The first step is to recognize that not every challenge deserves fear. Epictetus reminded us that it is not events but our opinions about them that disturb us. By pausing to ask, is this truly harmful, or is it only my judgment making it so? We begin to separate real threats from imagined ones. Next, focus energy where it counts. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that his mind and actions were his alone to govern. In modern life, this may mean concentrating on your honesty rather than your reputation, on effort rather than outcome, on kindness rather than recognition. Courage grows when we invest in what is ours to shape and stop chasing what lies beyond our control. Stoic practice also involved voluntary discomfort, which Seneca strongly recommended. This could mean fasting, enduring cold, or choosing simplicity. The goal is not suffering but preparation, reminding ourselves that much of what we fear losing is not essential. By facing small discomforts willingly, we dissolve fear's illusion and build resilience. Another exercise is the gradual confrontation of fear. If rejection frightens you, begin with small conversations or risks. If failure haunts you, take on modest challenges that stretch your limits. Each act is like lifting a weight. Over time, the burden feels lighter, and what once paralyzed you becomes manageable. Courage, like muscle, is strengthened through steady use. But courage must always remain tethered to virtue. For the Stoics, courage without wisdom becomes recklessness. Without justice, cruelty. Without temperance, indulgence. True courage is never about pride or conquest, but about steadfastness in what is good. This alignment keeps courage from becoming destructive and ensures it remains a force for integrity. Pause and reflect. Where does fear hold you back? Perhaps in words unspoken, chances avoided, or dreams left waiting. Imagine approaching these with calm reason, asking whether the risk is real, whether the fear is valid, and whether the potential good outweighs the imagined threat. In this clarity, courage finds space to grow. Ultimately, courage matures only when theory becomes practice. Stoic wisdom cannot remain on the page. It must be lived in decisions, habits, and reflections. Marcus wrote his notes each morning and evening, not for others but for himself. In the same way, journaling, meditation, and mindful action can help us translate courage from idea to reality. Life will always present fear, some rooted in real danger, many born of illusion. But you hold the power to decide which fears deserve your attention and which you release. By aligning knowledge with action, and by drawing strength from those who lived before, you can cultivate a courage that is calm, steady, and deeply human. To live in this way is to live wisely, freely, and with a heart no longer ruled by shadows. Real courage is not the absence of fear, but the wisdom to know what deserves our concern and what does not. Through Stoic philosophy, we learn that fear loses its grip when met with reason, reflection, and disciplined action. By applying these teachings, you can face uncertainty with clarity, embrace challenges with steadiness, and let go of fears that do not serve you. Begin today with small steps of mindfulness. Pause to notice your fears, reflect on their true weight, and respond with courage born from understanding rather than impulse. Each act of awareness is a step toward freedom, a reminder that clarity, not fear, should guide your choices. If these insights resonate with you, we invite you to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Dharma to continue receiving timeless wisdom and practical guidance. In our next exploration, we'll dive into Break bad karma using powerful Stoic habits daily to discover how discipline and reflection can reshape your life.
References 1. Irvine, W.B., 2009. A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy. Oxford University Press. Point 2. Holiday, R., 2016. The Daily Stoic, 366 Meditations on Wisdom, Perseverance, and the Art of Living. Portfolio. Point 3, Seneca, L.A., 2015. Letters from a Stoic, Moral Essays for Modern Life. Penguin Classics.